Welcome to the Cyber Center for Biblical Studies. Hi, my name is Bateman. During our last video, we talked about introductory issues for the letter of Jude. We discussed the authorship of Jude, recipients for the letter of Jude, the date for the letter of Jude, and the potential occasion for the letter of Jude. And we looked at certain commentators and how commentators may be affected based upon how they view the authorship of Jude. During this video, we're going to discuss the occasion for the writing of the letter of Jude. With me, I have Scott Barger, pastor of New Horizon Community Church in Warsaw, Indiana. And once again, he will ask a few questions to help guide our discussion today as we talk about the occasion for the writing of Jude. Scott?
In our last video you talked about that in general there are two opinions of the occasion for the writing of Jude. One is that it was written to address Gnostic false teachers. The other, that it was written to address Christian false teachers. But you take a different perspective on the occasion. Tell us more about that.
Yes, Scott, that's true. Most commentators who've written on the letter of Jude tend to believe that Jude is addressing either Gnostic false teachers or Christian false teachers. Yet what I suggest is what Jude is actually addressing is the revolutionary movement of the Zealots just prior to the Jewish revolt in 70 AD. Before I address some of the differences, let me emphasize the similarities that I have with many evangelical commentators concerning the introductory issues to Jude. Like my evangelical counterparts, I believe Jude, the brother of James, authored the book of Jude. I believe that the recipients were Judean believers and that the destination was actually Judea. The date, AD 62 to 66. The occasion, Jewish zealots who were on the rise throughout Judea. During our last video, we noted that most commentators took either a Gnostic false teacher view, whereby the letter of Jude was written AD 80 to 160, or a Christian false teacher view, whereby the letter was written AD 40 to 80. I, on the other hand, am advocating a Jewish zealot view, written sometime between 62 and 66 AD.
Okay, fair enough. So you agree with most other commentators regarding authorship, but you have a different view regarding occasion. You believe that Jude is addressing an occasion related to the Zealot Movement leading up to the Jewish revolt. Well, why is that, and who are the Zealots?
The major reason against the false teacher view is the lack of false teaching in the letter. Another reason is that unlike 2 Peter, who uses a lot of pseudo-prefixes before the word teacher and prophet, he will say false teacher or false prophet. We have none of those type of labelings in Jude. What we do see in Jude is a major concern about rebellion and God's judgment of it, which brings me to the Zealot Movement. The general consensus is that the Zealot movement began with Judas the Galilean in AD 6. It was both a political and religious movement. On the one hand, there was a refusal to call anyone Lord and Master. Josephus tells us they think little of submitting to death in unusual forms and permitting vengeance to fall on kinsmen and friends if only they may avoid calling any man master. Another issue for the zealot was paying taxes. They frequently incited rebellion against Rome. Once again, Josephus tells us, under his administration, Judas of Galilee incited his countrymen to revolt, upbraiding them as cowards for consenting to pay tribute to the Romans and tolerating mortal masters after having God for their Lord. Eventually, the efforts of Judas the Galilean failed, but the movement continued on through his sons, James and Simon, in 46 and 48. In 65 to 66, under the leadership of Menachem, another son of Judas, the Zealot movement changed their tactics. They became known for their assassinations of Roman leaders and Jewish leaders who would submit to Roman rule. The Zealot movement ended in 73 under the leadership of Eleazar, grandson of Judas the Galilean. Consequently, there is continuity of the Zealot Sicarii movement against Rome. It began under the leadership of Judas the Galilean in AD 6 and ended in 73 under the leadership of his grandson Eleazar. Jesus ministered during a period of time when there was a lull in the Zealot movement. Jude, on the other hand, ministered during a time when the Zealot movement was on the rise. I suggest that Jude wrote just prior to the Judean War for Independence between the years 62, after the death of James, and before the Jewish revolt in 66. Two sources that would be extremely helpful in preparation for teaching and studying and understanding the historical setting for the book of Jude would be Josephus. Josephus, in its entirety, is a very long and verbose work. However, Paul L. Meyer has written a work entitled Josephus, The Essential Writings. It's a condensed version of the Jewish antiquities and Jewish wars that provides a Reader's Digest version of the writings of Josephus. Another work is The Zealots, written by Martin Engel. He shows how important and how central the Zealot movement is to the history of Judea during the time of Jude's writing. He draws from Josephus and other Jewish sources and examines the religious, social, and political context which led up to the Jewish insurrection of 66 AD. So, Scott, as I think about the book of Jude, I place it during a period of time in Judea's history where they rebel. The people of God, people who are God's chosen, are rebelling against a political system that God has placed the Judeans in, and they're rebelling against it. Now, there is a group of people that are followers of Jesus. They have become Messiah followers. They are part of God's kingdom. And Jude is telling them, don't get involved in this rebellion against Rome. Do not rebel against Rome. God does not like rebellion. God punishes rebellion. And he expects people to take a stand against this Jewish revolt against Rome. And in the process of taking a stand against the revolt, they are to defend their faith. They are to defend the fact that they follow Messiah, Jesus. And in the following of Messiah Jesus, in verses 22 and 23, and in the process of following Jesus in verses 22 and 23, the manner in which believers are to defend their faith is to extend mercy to those within the body, to extend the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ to those outside of the body, and to extend mercy to those outside of the body with a sense of fear. So the book of Jude is very relevant to us. Christians are not to be a rebellious people, but they're to be a people who defend the faith and in the process extend mercy to those in the church and those outside of the church.